Rightio, we're now getting on to high-performance homes and, importantly, not just high-performance homes, but how do we actually deliver them? So, while the New Zealand Green Building Council have been part of that early adoption of healthy, efficient, low-carbon homes, it's still a process. We're still on a journey to achieving these. There are some groundbreaking projects. There's some really good research now around embedded sustainability at the project level, but also within organisations. And a person who has been a significant contributor to that and works at the New Zealand Green Building Council will now come forward and host this panel discussion. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Damiloju Adeyina, who is the Technical Manager Residential at the New Zealand Green Building Council, to then host this panel discussion going forward. So, Dr. Dami, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter. You tried. Dr. Damiloju Adeyina. Thank you. Doing the best work of our lives is a phrase I believe deeply connects us at the Green Building Council. Personally, it's a great privilege to contribute to that work that pioneers past and present, Sam Archer, Matthew Cutler-Welsh, and many others seated in this room have done over the decade, and particularly getting us to where we are now, Homestar Version 5. This panel is made of early adopters of Version 5. And what does this really mean? It signifies healthier, warmer, low-carbon homes. Considering that most of the industry is still playing catch-up, they're still navigating and asking questions on airtight construction, continuous insulation, mechanical ventilation, and heat recovery, which seems to be new here in New Zealand. But as we've heard this morning from Matthew and from Rob, that this is standard practice elsewhere, and we're now looking forward to these presenters and hearing from them today their journey and how they've been able to deliver on this. In fact, banks and other large listed companies now require to produce climate-related disclosures. So we know, in fact, that designers and builders need to start thinking about carbon. In that light, please welcome with me these early adopters to talk through their process, their journey, and in no particular order. First up, I'm going to call on Nathan Edmondston from JTB Architect. Nathan is a senior architect and senior sustainability lead at JTB Architect. In their Nelson office, he is a certified passive house designer and a Homestar Version 5 assessor with 19 years industry experience. He has also been a strong advocate for the environment through designing high-performance, low-carbon house for his family. Nathan has demonstrated the solution to our climate crisis, that the solutions are already available. Nathan's presentation will look through carbon aspects of his 10 Homestar house. I say that again, 10 Homestar house, Peter. Starting with the end in mind and the importance of including Homestar as early as possible. Thank you for coming up, Nathan. The next person that I'll be bringing up is Stephanie Spicer. She is the head of sustainability at Oceania Healthcare. Homestar helps, this is in our words, to help us pick out overeating risk for our vulnerable people. Stephanie has been doing this. I think Oceania themselves have been doing this since 2018. Stephanie, just give me a second there. Awesome. Stephanie, your bio ran away. Stephanie is the head of sustainability at Oceania Healthcare. She is a sustainability field for 15 years and has worked in both New Zealand and the UK in the healthcare and financial services industry. Stephanie holds a master's in environmental change and management and is passionate about embedding sustainability into business practices. Stephanie originally is trained as a solicitor and also holds a law degree, LLB, and have acts in geography and environmental management. Please welcome with me Stephanie to the stage. The next person I'll be calling on is Sam Brown from Aotea Architects. He draws upon his past experiences and desire for social and environmental betterment, giving him the focus to push architecture beyond the boundaries of everyday. His professional objective is to see more holistic and high-performing built environment across all architectural fields with a specific focus on residential sector. Sam today will be talking about how we adopted version 5 early enough, using this as an opportunity to transition from one-off bespoke designs to off-the-shelf house plan, doing the background work very early enough and implementing this across the country. Please, once again, please put your hands together for this lovely panel that I've formed, and Sam, take stage.
Thank you, Dami. Kia ora. I'm Sam Brown, founder and director at Arête Architects and co-host of the Design Principles podcast. I started Arête Architects 3.5 years ago with a clear vision to generate architecture that is responsive and exists harmoniously within its surrounding context. This objective led me to high-performance building practices, and I soon became deeply involved with the New Zealand Green Building Council and the Homestar rating system. I began to use Homestar as a mechanism to ensure that what I was designing met the architectural objective that I'd set myself. After completing my Homestar practitioner, designer and assessor training, the NZGBC announced the transition to Homestar version 5. Recognising the importance of staying ahead of the curve, I dedicated myself to adopting version 5 early on. This proactive approach allowed me to integrate the latest sustainable practices into my projects, ensuring that Arête Architects remained at the forefront of environmentally conscious design. I was fortunate enough to have a project in development that was running concurrently with this training, allowing me to apply new insights in real time. When I presented the benefits of high-performance housing to our clients for the restricted section project, they were just as enthusiastic as I was to embark on this journey. Designing the restricted section required us to rethink our design approach. We had to move away from our entrenched methods and began to look at the home's design with a more critical lens. Modulation, materiality, resilience, orientation, the list went on, and we began to find effective solutions to solving these challenges. The client's strict budget was also a challenge and provided us with a goal for innovation, stripping back much of the ornamentation associated with a common modern home. The restricted section achieved a 6-star design rating under version 5, making it one of the first bespoke one-off projects to do so. The client's brief was to create a healthy, warm and dry home for their young family, and the results have been overwhelmingly positive. Their feedback and the finished results reinforced our commitment to sustainable high-performance design. A key feature of the restricted section project was the use of structurally insulated panels, or SIPs, for the primary exterior envelope. The successful application of SIPs, along with their ease of installation and superior performance, provided a new direction for our line of design inquiry. We decided to adopt SIPs as the cornerstone for all future new design builds, leveraging the lessons learned from the restricted section. The next iteration, the TU Studio in Lake Aotea, was a small, standalone home with a 36 square metre footprint spread over 2 stories. The move to a new climate zone meant many of the mechanisms employed with the restricted section needed to be reviewed. This project posed unique challenges due to its compact size and therefore high form factor and the client's desire to capture expansive views to the south and east. These factors made it difficult to achieve the Homestar 6 design rating requested by the clients. This challenge wasn't unsurmountable though. It gave us the opportunity to explore new solutions in detailing, materiality and specification that built on the IP already developed with the restricted section. Despite being our most challenging Homestar project to date, it was awarded a 6-star design rating under version 5 also. Following the TU Studio, we developed The Village, a project consisting of 2 homes, iteration 3 and iteration 4 on our journey. It was developed on a shared inner-town site in central Otago. Designed to be intergenerational, these homes needed to be adaptable and resilient in a harsh local climate. Our learnings from the TU Studio were particularly important here as we are now more familiar with designing in this area. Collaborating with high-performance housing expert builders, Compound, we were once again able to build on our previous experience as well as draw from another industry expert. We created 2 homes that met the client's needs both now and for the future. This project is currently under construction and has received a 6 Homestar design rating under version 5 as well. The TU Studio and the Village are both examples of an evolution on a theme, where we have looked to refine not only our design aesthetic, but also look at ways that we can design with creativity and flair within the Homestar realm. The previous 4 iterations were an excellent way to provide individual clients one-off bespoke solutions, a chance to not only have a unique piece of architecture, but also a high-performance home that far exceeded their expectations and the common requirements of the residential market today. While these projects were successful, they only catered to a niche market. We wanted to take the lessons learned and create a housing solution accessible to a broader audience. This desire led to the development of Citrus Housing, a modular, cost-effective design solution that would be readily available, providing a standalone housing solution that could be also employed in development that would challenge the conventional offerings on the market today. Citrus addresses several key aspects. Cost-effective and modular construction, a minimum 6-star home rating nationwide, for all climate zones, for all elevations, and for all aspects. Climate adaptability, replicatability, strong design presence, efficient space planning, and a quality living environment. Citrus represents the culmination of our efforts to bring sustainable, high-performance housing to a wider market. It challenges conventional residential offerings by providing an innovative, scalable solution that meets the diverse needs of modern homeowners. Please feel free to scan the QR code for more information or check out our prospectus, which is linked in the event app for further information. The journey of Arête Architects over the past 3.5 years has been one of continuous learning and adaptation. From the early days of exploring sustainable design through Homestar to the development of Citrus Housing, we've strived to create homes that are not only beautiful and functional, but also environmentally responsible. Our commitment to high-performance housing is unwavering, and we look forward to continuing this journey, pushing the boundaries of what is possible in the high-performance architectural realm. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm excited to share more about our projects and vision for the future, and now I'd like to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Sam. Stephanie, or did you want to allow Nathan go first and then we'll come back to that? Yeah? Yeah, carry on.
All right. Morena, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Stephanie Spicer, toko ingoa. Thanks very much for the introduction, Dami, and I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about Oceania Healthcare's journey with Homestar. So Oceania is a developer and operator of retirement villages and aged care homes across New Zealand. We have over 40 villages throughout the country and are home to 4,000 residents and 3,000 employees. Our core activities then are around designing, developing and constructing, and then the sale, management and ongoing operation of these integrated villages and care homes. So in terms of our portfolio, about 55% of the residences that we have are independent living in the retirement village, where people may live in a villa or an apartment, and it's these that we seek to get Homestar accreditation for. The other 45% of our residences are care beds or care suites, where our residents' health care needs may change and they might need a little bit more extra support. So although those technically fall under Green Star, where we have done developments in the past, we've just applied the Homestar principles across the whole development. So as Dami mentioned, we've registered our first Homestar project in 2018, and now 6 years on, we've just got over a quarter of our independent living units certified to Homestar 6 as built rating across 8 villages. So here in Auckland, we've got one project in Meadowbank, Eden, the Sands, and most recently our flagship development at the Helier in St Heliers. And then 4 more outside of Auckland in Tauranga, Christchurch, Hamilton and Nelson. And we have 3 more developments that are either registered or with the design rating and under construction, like Waterford here at Hobsonville Point. So in terms of these developments at the time, we were targeting points for things like building efficiency with low E glazing, continuous air extraction, heat pumps, water efficiency, and also construction waste diversion, and focusing on things like low VOC materials and paints and natural lighting. But with the improvements in the building code, we're really wanting to up our ambition. And we've got a picture here of our greenfield site, Namara, where we are aspiring for our villas to be Homestar 7 under the new version 5. So this is representing a really significant step up for Oceania, as the version 5 places considerably more emphasis on higher performing thermal envelope, moisture control, and focus on carbon. And we're working with some really great partners to help achieve that. We've got Matt Wilson and Joe Woods, who are just recognised as the champions in the previous slot, and our architects at Peddlethorpe, who have really engaged on designing higher performance homes with us. So the performance of the dwellings of the thermal envelope has been modelled as requiring 40 to 50% less heating demand than the current H1 code compliant dwelling. And this is going to hopefully be achieved through insulation, thicker framing, thermally broken joinery, higher performance glazing, air tightness detailing, a heat recovery ventilation system, and good orientation. And much of this is met, these are the mandatory minimum requirements under version 5. And you can see in the pictures the wide overhangs that will assist with preventing potential summer overheating, but allowing the lower angle winter sun. And much of the materials and the lighting and fittings that are specified under this version 5 project is what we've been doing in the past under Homestar 6. So there's a lot of talk about buildings, but this is why we're really wanting to build healthier and drier homes. It's our residents. We look after older New Zealanders across the country, and some of them are very vulnerable in their later years. And we all know that homes have a really clear and well-established impact on the health of the occupants. We find, if we have poorly heated and damp homes, our older residents are going to be at greater risk of respiratory diseases and things like coronary events, for example. So this is Glenda, who moved into the Helier 6 months ago. She watched it being built. She lived a street over. She was telling me how her 1970s bungalow with the old casement windows was, cold and chilly in winter, but by comparison, she's enjoying her apartment at the Helier as it's always warm and tends to have a constant temperature. I'm just going to touch on the climate-related risks and reporting that Dami said in her introduction. As a large listed issuer, Oceania is one of 200 climate reporting entities who must identify, assess and manage climate-related risks and opportunities, and report on this to the market with the financial impacts of those. And this is required under the Aotea New Zealand climate standards. We're about to publish our first report as Oceania next month. And part of this, Oceania has done an assessment of all its core sites across the country to really understand what's our exposure to certain physical climate hazards, such as things as flooding, coastal erosion, and coastal inundation. And we're looking out over different time horizons, in the near term out to 2050, out to 2080, and under different warming scenarios. And this really brought the conversation of climate change to the centre of the boardroom, and it's helping us to build resilience into our business, including with the way we design and build. And like other entities, we'll be assessing these risks across the whole value chain. So even if you're not caught by this reporting yet, if you're a supplier or a consultant, or if you're borrowing capital, you'll be impacted by it at some point soon. So we've really challenged ourselves to think about the long term and the value that we're creating for stakeholders, and not just about the short term costs or returns. And at Namara, although that development I had up on screen before, there's no explicit climate change risk or adaptation measures currently under the Homestar credit. We've completed a whole climate risk and adaptation plan for that village site, where we're also aiming for Green Star there as well. So for example, under extreme warming scenarios, hot days in Auckland are expected to increase from the current 20 a year to around 8, or quadruple to about 80 days later in the century. And with that comes increased health risks for our residents and for our staff. But designing to Homestar 7 has already got us some way along the journey with mitigating the extreme physical risks that we may face in the future. A good thermal envelope helps to insulate against the likely effects of increasing severe weather events like extreme hot days, and measures to prevent overheating. Also helps reduce our operational carbon emissions and mitigating against the transition risk associated with moving to a low carbon economy. So just in closing, Homestar helps us to deliver also on our sustainability goals. We launched our new sustainability framework last year, where we want to be reducing our environmental impact. We've got strict construction waste diversion targets in place linked to our sustainability loan, but most importantly we want to prioritise our resident wellbeing through conscious design. We've also got ambitious targets around reducing our carbon, focused on our scope 1 and 2 emissions at the moment, but we are looking at embodied carbon and have measured embodied carbon for a number of our developments. And we're wanting to just build in long-term resilience with the face of climate change, and we see Homestar as a great framework to help us do that. Thank you.
Ko Nathan Tokawingawa, no kotianga o kutipuna, I whanau mai au ki o Amaru. Kei whakatū au e noho ana. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about my house, which is the first V5 Homestar 10 rated house in New Zealand. I am from Nelson, so the first thing I need to address is how I got here. So thank you, Peter, who's sitting in the audience. He provided a lower carbon option for us to get here today. So we left on Monday. And we're here. So I'm glad to be here. So not only is the house 10-star, we also got certification as passive house as well. The real focus of our house was looking at low carbon materials and I suppose keeping the envelope as efficient as possible. So that meant relatively simple form. So a lot of timber used throughout, and really conscious of those things that are going to affect the embodied carbon of the building, because that was one of the main things that we were looking at. In terms of performance, so January power bill, or July, sorry, from last year, $104. February this year was $84. So not a big difference in the running costs throughout the year. So we're using less than 300 kilowatt hours per month. In February this year, it was less than 200. And that also includes charging our EV. So we're covering some of that, our travel aspect of our getting around. In summer, we know how this building operates and how it needs to operate. So my wife and I, we are able to keep that house in a nice, comfortable temperature all throughout the year. So cross ventilation, stack ventilation has been how it operates. We're obviously a 2-story building. We don't have any thermal mass either. So, and we're able to actually have that constant, comfortable temperature throughout the year. So the main thing I kind of want to touch on today is, I suppose, the benefits of building on piles. It's something we used to do a lot in the 70s. Somewhere in the 70s, 80s, we started moved away from that and started building on concrete slab on grade. We did a lot of research before we started building. ThinkStep did a survey or a study that basically said green concrete is only going to reduce your embodied carbon of your building by 5%. So if we wanted to meet our global targets, that keeping warming under 1.5 degrees, we needed to do something drastically different. And I know that there is, from Rob, that we're heading on a different trajectory. I want to provide a solution that will help us change that direction. So, I looked at the analysis. If we were building, just looking at concrete as an example, it is relatively high embodied carbon. So if we were building business as usual, we would have had it slab on grade. We would have had single story, so it would have been a bigger footprint. Excavation, our ground conditions where we were already pretty bad, so piles probably would have still been required anyway. And all of this added up to about 70 cube of concrete. The finished house ended up with about 14 cube of concrete, so that it's looking at where those wins can be made. So as we run out of flat land, we're forcing ourselves into this position where we, for whatever reason, we excavate this big hole, build this big retaining wall, and put a house in it. And that retaining wall, I don't know how we get the numbers to stack up financially, but it is a higher carbon approach as well. And if we look at just the thermal performance of the edge of your building, building with a suspended timber floor is so much easier to get higher performance around the edge of your building. Access to services. You have the ability, if you need to, for whatever reason, there's a leaking pipe or something, you have the ability to go under the house and check or change or adjust, rather than cutting big holes in a concrete slab. So that's the old Hamilton house that I had. So this is the carbon analysis we had from our house. So I think I've done the carbon analysis about 6 or 7 times for this house with different versions of LCA Quick. Every time it got updated, I was redoing it. With the biogenic carbon that's stored in the timber, we are sitting just under that 1.5 degrees in terms of the carbon associated, or the CO2 associated with the lifetime build of this house, which I think for us was one of our goals, and I'm really quite proud that we were able to achieve that. And the reality is we are running out of time to make those significant changes that we need to. And one of the main goals for us was to be able to look at our daughter in the eye in 10 years' time and say that we have done our best. We've pushed hard for change, and I think if we can start changing where the industry is and what the industry is doing, I think we will have a brighter future for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panel for that presentation. I'm just going to start with you, Nathan, just because you're talking about that and your daughter and all of that. I wanted to pick on that and ask, what was your real motivation for 10 Homestar? I mean, you could have gone, 6 Homestar, 7. What was your real motivation for going for the moon?
Is this working? Yes. I suppose it was, my wife's an ecologist, and I'm interested in sustainability. So realistically, it was, if not me, who? It was kind of this situation we found ourselves in. And, we're kind of operating in this field constantly and looking at how we can make things better. And you know, it is 10. I think is just. I think it just occurred really because it met with what our personal where we were personally and what we think needed to happen. You know, what were we comfortable with as our legacy for leaving that for our daughter.
Right, thank you. May I throw the same question to you, Sam, as well? Because I know that you adopted it very early enough, and I remember when we saw your submissions, we were like, oh, wow, someone wants to do this on a large scale. What was your motivation around that?
Yeah, I think, is this working? There we go. Yeah, I think for us, we realised the benefit of it immediately. And so often we've grown up in or lived in or been party to a poor living environment. And when clients are coming to us, a lot of the time with their life savings or a large chunk of it and wanting to produce a home, I think we'd be doing them a disservice and creating something that wasn't suitable now for the future and forever. So we really wanted to lead the charge with that, and fortunately they were keen to come along on the journey with us.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to talk to us about the motivation for Oceania just going on this journey of Homestar and how you found it so far?
Sure, thanks. Just check that was working. So I touched on this in my presentation, but we are a people business. We've got 4,000 over 70s and living at one of our homes or in our villages, and really wanting to make sure that we are on the journey of building better, healthier, warmer, drier homes for them. We're definitely nowhere near a 10 Homestar, and I think that's amazing what you've done there, Nathan. But we've been doing Homestar 6 for a few years now. That's kind of BAU, and with the code, basically at that level now. We really wanted to get it up to the next level, and that's what we're achieving. Certainly, just also as a big company, obviously looking for finance and things as well. We've got a sustainability-linked loan, but certainly in the future, if we want green bonds and things, certification is important there. And also just having the certification really is proof that we're doing what we say we're going to be doing in terms of our sustainability framework and wanting to really reduce our environmental impact and really focus on reducing our operational emissions, as well as looking to the embodied carbon piece as well. Our emissions report, which is coming out tomorrow, will show that 94% of our emissions are actually Scope 3, and most of that is coming from the way that we are building in terms of our villages. So it's a really important thing for us to focus on as we go ahead. And I think, it's just the right thing to be doing. It's part of our social license, I think.
Thank you, Stephanie. There's a question that we hear all the time, and I might throw this to Nathan and to Sam, and we hear questions about the tools aren't available, version 5 is so hard. My question is, how are you managing? What are you doing? What's your response to this sort of comment?
I can go first. I think for us, the tools are available. They're all there. They're readily there. The education's available, whether that be through the Green Building Council or other mechanisms. And it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of innovation, as I outlined in my presentation, and a desire to actually want to make a change. I think from an architecture point of view and from a design-led practice point of view, a lot of people are reluctant to make that change because they feel like there's going to be some level of compromise in terms of what you can actually produce. But I'd refute that and say that you can design with flair and also with performance. So it just takes a little bit of care, consideration and gumption to go for it.
I think, would that be thinking about it, it doesn't have to be ugly. You know, when you say you're optimizing the envelope of the building, it's looking like architects do not have much options. I might throw that to Nathan as well. You know, it looks like if you're trying to build optimally, you want to make sure that it's sustainable, you want to reduce, you know, the window to wall area and all of those things. It looks like with this building, can we really achieve beauty and efficiency at the same time?
I think our definition of beauty needs to shift. I mean, how often are we looking at these houses that are just facades of glass and we go, wow, that's beautiful, give it an award. We need to change that. I mean, realistically, I look at that and I think, man, that's going to be cold. Or man, in summer that is going to be so friggin' hot. I mean, understanding that, and as architects and designers, we should be able to look at that and inherently understand straight away that, you know, that isn't going to perform very well. What are we doing? We're spending all this extra money on equipment to condition these spaces that aren't designed to perform in the environment we're putting them in. So just change what we're doing and think better about what we're doing.
Yeah, Sam.
I think just further to that point as well, I don't necessarily think that, and this is a common misconception and has been for a long time with passive houses, that passive houses are square boxes with no windows. You can design creatively, you can design with larger openings, you can design almost anything really, and it's still achieve an incredibly high level of performance. You just have to change convention. And I think that's the biggest shift at the moment in the industry, is that people have done things a certain way, like Nathan said, regarding slab floors and things for such a long time, that it's taking a while for them to shift and realise that you don't have to do it the same way you've always done it. You can be creative, and therefore you can still achieve high aesthetic with high performance.
Thank you. Stephanie, I'm just thinking there, in an organization, sometimes you're having to convince quite a number of people of this change that you need to make in order to make your resident more comfortable, in order to make sure that your buildings are built for the future and not for just today. Can you talk us through how you've walked through that and convinced people, and maybe some tips that we can use in the room to convince others, naysayers, that say we don't need to do this right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think internally the board and management are really behind, you know, building for, you know, healthier, more sustainable homes. And one of the challenges though that we face is around the perception or reality of it costing more upfront in terms of making the feasibility of it all stack up. And I think, you know, we are holding these assets for the long term, so we should be able to make that work. It's not like we're building them and selling them off and walking away. And so I think we're trying to move away from a you know, a big focus just on development margin and actually looking at the whole lifetime cost. So that's one thing we're trying to, which is a bit of a barrier at the moment in convincing people to really up the ambition, because there is this perception around cost and how we can make the feasibility stack up. But I think, you know, this is something, you know, as Nathan said, we don't have much time to. We've got to halve our emissions by 2030 and be net zero by 2050, and so we just need to get on and do it. And we think if we think it's going to be expensive now, the cost of inaction is going to be even greater. So we just need to get on and do it. And I think really highlighting other benefits around, you know, the health and well-being elements and things. Sometimes, you know, that's an external cost that we don't necessarily have to bear, but it's important to kind of be considering those externalities as well.
Health and well-being. I'm sure that's one of the things that get left behind in the conversation whilst we're tossing around with the cost bit. And I'm just wondering, Sam, if you're able to chip there on the cost, how you've been able to do this, because I know that you're trying to replicate this around the country. I'm sure there's some conversation there about the cost. How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, costs is probably one of the biggest hurdles at the moment in this industry and in this sector. And I think one thing that we've looked to do to reduce the cost of high performance building is designed with a little bit more intent. We're trying to use solutions and methodologies that reduce the amount of trades that you're using. So for instance, for all of our SIP builds, we leave them fully exposed. So you're completely reducing the amount of jibboard or having another subtrade in there to do work. And like I said, with the restricted section, it's the stripping away of the ornamentation. I mean, so many of our projects have unnecessary ornamentation. Even having handles in your kitchen is unnecessary ornamentation. It's all these little methods that you can work on, and if you're clever, implement, and they're all having an impact on cost reduction. In that same breath, the way that we have sort of built on our projects, or on the projects of doing them as one-off bespoke solutions, it's not necessarily the most cost-effective way of finding effective solution to the problem. That's where the citrus things come in, where we're looking at volume, and volume's the next hurdle that we need to jump to, and hopefully people get on board and recognise that volume housing in the high-performance realm is probably the only way to reduce cost.
Would it be a contribution to say that thinking about this quite early on and making a decision that this is what you want to do really helps in that decision-making process and cutting down costs, because then you know what needs to be in and what needs to be out, really?
Exactly, yep. So, and that's what's helped with the iterative process as well. So every single house that we've done along the way, we've learnt from, and then we've been able to adapt and employ into the next previous project and take all of those learnings and then put them into citrus. So that's essentially the most streamlined, efficient build that we can produce at this stage of the iterative process. And there's probably going to be further learnings and hopefully further cost reductions as well.
And some standardization happening across board as well, which we want to see. Awesome, thank you. Nathan, just picking back there on, you talked about without thermal mass. I think the question there is, how are you doing for heat loss in winter?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I suppose one of the interesting things with the house, how it works, is we're going to have the most, when we're going to have the most heat loss is when it's a clear night. So that's when it's going to cool down the most, which means the next day is going to be a clear day. Sun comes out, heats the house up. So we didn't use heating last year over winter. So the house, I know we're theoretically supposed to keep the house at 20 degrees, but it dropped down to 18 degrees for a few days. Well, actually, probably only one day. And then the sun came out and it heated it up again. So it is doing what it's supposed to do. The house isn't supposed to be zero heating, but we aren't putting heating into it. So, yeah.
And I think maybe to add to that point would be there isn't one size fit all when you're trying to design for efficiency. There are different options that you can look at and how you do it. And that's why we really value modeling, because then you can see what is making an impact, what you need to be changing and what needs to happen. And so I think that's where we really need to be focusing on to say, really, do we need this? And does this need to be part of the process that we are? It's not just one thing, it's not just the other, it's a combination of a number of things. Thank you. Sam, how do you think about open source for your designs so that, you know, others don't need to reinvent the wheel for comfortable, healthy, low carbon homes?
That's a good question. I still have to pay the bills. But look, maybe not the exact design. I think there's, you know, we as designers still need to take pride and hold a little bit of our IP, but in terms of the actual methodologies, construction methods, design methodologies, materiality, all of those solutions that we've worked through, that's open information, and I'm more than happy to share. And I think, you know, the way that these projects are designed, they're designed in a modular manner. All you really need to do is just change your Lego blocks and you can create anything you want. So although, you know, we have these 6 designs, I can give you the tools to design your own ones pretty easily.
Thank you, Sam. Stephanie, I'll just jump back to you there. What would you really like to see change in the industry to really help what you are currently doing and the change you're really trying to drive?
Well, I think, you know, just looking at everyone in this room, there's a lot of people really passionate and doing really good things across the industry. But I think, you know, just needing to make that BAU and some of the Rob, I think it was earlier, talking about what he's been trying to do in the UK with bringing everyone on the journey. I think what Antonia and the team are doing with Building for Climate Change would be really good to see that being enacted. I think we need to raise the floor and to make sure that we're getting everyone along on this journey. And just make it more widespread, I think, would be in terms of training and understanding. There's this perception around, increased cost and complexity, but I think the more people who get on the journey, then hopefully the complexity and the cost comes down.
Thank you. The costs come down, that's what we keep hearing. And I think generally, from what Matthew said this morning, houses are just expensive in New Zealand, just generally. And so I think generally we just need to be thinking about, if they are that expensive, wouldn't we rather spend our dollar in the right places for the future? Nathan, there's a question here about life cycle analysis of your project, and I know that this is a bit technical, but I think it's worth talking about in terms of, did you do any comparison between timber and concrete, essentially, before making the decision?
In what way?
So LCA stage C and D, construction, demolition, and all of that, this person saying, were there any, did you do any analysis? Overall, I would say just life cycle analysis, see that I'm making my decision based on this. Timber is better, concrete is better for me for this project.
Everything was based on my life cycle analysis. An interesting point, I'm currently arguing with council about not having a sealed or concrete driveway. And I know it's kind of a bigger thing, that I know how much carbon is associated with having that driveway, and they just won't let it go. So I've got a gravel driveway. I don't have any issues. It's been functioning for 2 years. But the planning rules say it needs to be sealed. So yes, everything I did was based around carbon analysis. And there's a few things that slipped through, but yeah.
Right. I think around the room, I just want to get a feel as if you did any manual testing of your project. I know, Stephanie, we've talked about client resident feedbacks on how they're feeling in the house. You want to talk us through that? And if we'll just go around you to talk about, if there are any testing, did you test to see how your house is performing, temperature? I mean, I know you mentioned that, but in terms of energy, and Sam as well, I know you've got a prototype as well. Was there any testing done that to validate the work that you've done? Stephanie, I'll just start with you.
On resident?
Yeah. What's the feedback like?
In terms of resident feedback, I mean, I just anecdotally hear things when I go out to speak at villages and things like that. Certainly one of the, everyone appreciates living in a warm, dry home. They pay for if they're living in the village, they pay for their own electricity bills. So common, saying that they've got low bills and things like that. But I think one of the other challenges with it is actually, when residents are coming to us, they're coming to us because they want to, because of the service or the location or the beauty of the place. It's not necessarily they're not making it for a sustainability reason. I would love to see more residents coming in, actually knowing more about Homestar and demanding that, and maybe we are designing and building for that resident of the future, and we'll hopefully see more of that. As we move forward, and then I think another thing is also residents' willingness to pay the extra for to have solar on the roof and all those kind of things as well. We need to convince the resident that of their potentially higher upfront cost, but better lowering running costs and experience.
I think solar is one that we could have a long chat about here today, but we're not going to. Nathan, can I hear your point?
Prototyping. This wasn't the first house I designed and built for myself, so we did one in Hamilton about 10 years ago as well. So from that, there was a lot of learnings from that, and testing, and we're living in the house, so there's a lot of testing going on.
You're the right tester.
Yeah, constantly.
You're experiencing it.
Yeah, so we're one of the tests that we were really interested in looking at was how to manage overheating. So that's an ongoing investigation that we're working on, and as temperatures rise, how do we continue to keep that summer comfort?
Thank you, Nathan.
I mean, our entire line of design inquiry has been a testing method. From each project to project to project, we've taken lessons and we've then employed those learnings into the next one. So we've sort of done it at full scale in real time. And like Nathan said, the Terry Studio project is actually my own home, second home down in Lake Aotea. And again, that client feedback, like you said, Stephanie, is sort of invaluable. And everybody that we've dealt with, that we've built one of these homes for, or that have stayed or spent any time in one of these homes, like I said in my presentation, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So I think there's no real better metric for testing than that.
Thank you. I realize that we're now running to the end. I just want to give you an opportunity to say something that you feel it's important that you haven't already said that you want to leave this room with. I'll start with you, Sam.
Cool. 2 quick points, if I may. First one, I think the biggest challenge that we've faced in this journey is getting people, not necessarily clients, but the other people involved in the project on board. So be that consultants or be that contractors, you need that buy-in for these projects to be a success. And I think there's a lot of industry education that's required to get everybody up to speed to understanding the benefits of designing in a high-performance manner. And along with that one as well, scale is probably the next biggest hurdle. And I think the more that we look at upscaling these solutions, the easier it's going to be and the more accessible it'll be for all.
Thank you.
For me, it would be just start that carbon analysis as early as possible, because that's where you're going to get the most benefits, and understand. You got to build that carbon literacy. So just do that as early as possible, and test options, so you know how to improve. And the other thing is just be better. There's so much scope for improvement. So the people in this room, just go out and be better.
I would just say I'm in the thick of climate reporting at the moment, but we are really thinking about the long term and making sure that you're designing and building that in now, because the assets are going to be around for a long time. And with my sustainability hat on, I think we just really don't have much time now to really close the gap with the climate crisis, and I think just making sure you've got a good team around you from the start who share in the vision and are on board with it is important. Starting early and just getting on with it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we please put our hands together for this panel? They've done excellently well. Thank you. Thank you. In addition to all that they've said, if you haven't heard about our carbon calculators, go check out EGG. It's for homes. We have the Green Star embodied carbon calculator as well. If you haven't gotten into ECHO, what are you waiting for? Thank you.
Thank you. And a round of applause as well for Dr. Dani as well.